Okay. Good thing I wasn't drinking my coffee when you said that. Oh, woman drowns on coffee due to Zoom call. Can you just see the news? Then it will be that Zoom causes people drowning. Then that will hit the bigger news, and it will be can't do Zoom because it causes drowning, and it will just never stop.
Okay, so we are now live on YouTube, and starting March 30th, Tuesday Talk. I'm sure more people will join as the time progresses. Today I have mostly three big things to talk about. It's about the worship services, about annual conference, and the Commission on Communications. So I'm going to dive in. And for those of you that are joining us that don't normally join us, or if you're wondering, you could always raise your hand, interrupt, or after each segment, I'll stop and ask questions. But this is kind of a conversation. I just started out with lots of, okay, here's what's coming up. All right, so the worship services, that's the first thing. We had been talking for a while about a worship service that was going to be pre-recorded that pastors could use any Sunday after Easter. Originally, I kept saying the Sunday after Easter, and finally I found out that it's actually any Sunday after Easter. So in some cases, the Sunday right after Easter, some churches already have something planned. So don't feel like, oh man, I can't use it and have a weekend off. You can use it 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, whatever works for your church. And then the resources for any of these pre-recorded worship services are available at dscumc.org/worship. You should have received an email letting you know that most of it is ready. At first, I thought it was, yay, it's all ready. Here you go, guys. And then as I started digging in and seeing what's in there, it turns out there's 3 songs that are missing, but those should be added either tomorrow, Wednesday, March 31st, or Thursday at the latest. So before the end of the week, we'll have those posted up in the same Google Drive. And along with those 3 missing song recordings, we'll also have one file that is the whole worship service already pieced together. What you see in there now is the different segments. And I do want to make sure that you guys understand that whether you put together the service however you want it, and we put it in segments like that so that if your church normally likes to do your own church announcements for a certain piece, or if you want to have one of your own people do a reading for one of those sections or anything at all, it's just trying to make it easier for you to use what you want out of that pre-recorded service. And then we also do piece it all together. But even if your church just wants to use the full recorded service, there is some work that you do have to do. You'll see when you go to that Google Drive, one of the files in there includes the copyright information, and there's also a slide in there that's for you to use to add the copyright information in there. We don't include all of the copyright information in the pre-recorded service because we do have everyone's copyright numbers for CCLI, but then we'd have to create 130 recordings. So this is just a little bit of work on your guys' end to add at the end of the service a slide with that copyright information from that file and just add your church's copyright or CCLI license number. And what else? I think that was it with that. The other piece that you guys are the first to hear, this is the first announcement about it. Reconciling Ministries is going to be putting together a pre-recorded worship service, and they're hoping to have it ready in time for June 6th, which is Reconciling Sunday. And you don't, just like any of these other pre-recorded services, you don't absolutely have to use it on that Sunday. But that is the reconciling Sunday, and that's what it's for. So, if you can, try to use it then. Right now, the deadline that we're going with is May 21st. So that's about just over 2 weeks before that Sunday. We're hoping that that's when everything will be available there, but I will keep you posted if there's any delays, or if it's available before May 21st, you will be the first to know that as well. Okay, and that too will be available at dscumc.org/worship. Okay, any questions about that? Okay. All right, next piece is about annual conference. So for annual conference, there's 2 items. And one of them we talked about a little bit last week, the information for lay members to annual conference. And the other one is about the mission project publicity. So with the lay members to annual conference, we're working on putting together a list of all of the lay members to annual conference that includes their first name, last name, email address, phone number, and their church name. And turns out we don't have it all. That's information that every church should be putting into their charge conference or church conference forms. But sometimes, I don't know, stuff happens and it falls through the cracks and we don't quite get it. Or in some cases, we might have received it, but it's a little bit weird. Like maybe instead of the person's first name, it just said lay member or something like that. So I'm asking, pleading, please, if you guys could, it would be very, very helpful both to confirm that the information we have is correct or to provide it in case it was missing. Please send me an email to communications@dscumc.org that includes your church name and a list of the lay members to annual conference for your church. And then if you have alternates, list those separately, please. But they should all have first name, last name, their email address, their phone number, and of course, somewhere in there, your church's name. So it needs to be their email address, not your church's email address, not any email address that you would normally use to register them. Because this is not only, it has to be unique for every individual. So they can't share an email address because we're going to use this for their registration. We're also going to use it for their voting credentials. So it has to be unique and it has to be correct because they're going to be receiving information. Last week when we talked about the lay members to annual conference, a little bit about the focus was really about being able to communicate to them, send them, that first round of information of, okay, registration is open and here's the schedule of, the pre-conference briefing and annual conference and da-da-da. So this is going to help us also in that effort to make sure we've got everybody's contact information. And remember, do include the alternates in there because you never know. Sometimes it's on the day of that the lay member maybe gets sick, something happens, and the alternate needs to step in. So they should have been receiving all this information in advance. And we need to have their contact information so we can get them registered and get their voting credentials to them because they don't get that information, the registration or the voting credentials until they are actually the lay person, the lay member assigned to annual conference. Okay, any questions about that? Go ahead, Sherry.
Is this information automatically sent to all pastors in the church?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is an annual thing. They know that we need to get the lay members to annual conference information. It's part of what the whole packet that they get for charge conference or church conference, whichever they do. So every year they're supposed to turn it in, but sometimes churches turn in maybe they don't have their lay members to annual conference selected yet. So they put in, just to fill in the blanks, maybe they put in the church secretary's name or the pastor's name and the church email address just to get it finished. Because I think these are all required fields in the form. So that's why we end up missing it. And yeah, then annual conference stuff comes out every year first to the pastors, churches, lay members annual conference. I think we also send it to the church's lay leader on occasion. I think we also do that because we're trying to hit as many avenues as possible to make sure so they're all aware, hey guys, here's the annual conference information. Get it to the right people. Yeah.
Thanks. I was just interested in that process because if it just went to the pastor, I could see potentially, maybe that getting lost in the mail or something like that.
Yeah.
What other backup processes there were there? That was just my curiosity. Thanks so much. I appreciate that.
Good questions. Thanks. Okay. Then mission project publicity. So let's see, first of all, I think that the URL to find anything about the annual conference mission project, I'm going to double check as I talk about it. Let's see here, is dscumc.org/mission-project. Let's see if that worked. Yes, it did. Good. Okay, so this year's mission project is student hunger. And you'll see there that there are, bless you, sorry. So there's some articles already posted there on that dscumc.org/mission-project page. There's also a video in there, but I wanted to let you know that I think there's 3 more articles that are coming. And those articles, you can copy them and paste them into your newsletter, or you can, edit them a little. Maybe you just want to have a certain paragraph from it and you want to put your own information for your context to tell your people, hey guys, this is the annual conference mission project. Here's how you can send your gift cards, because the mission project this year is student hunger, and that's for each of our 4 campus ministries. The campus ministers there know the students, they understand how the world works for them there, and they said the best way to help them to be able to have money to feed themselves, or any of these other items that students need, but specifically we're targeting hunger to be so they have a meal, is by getting them $20 Visa gift cards.
Thank you.
But those seem to be, Holly, I'm going to mute you. There we go. And Chris, I'm going to mute you. Okay, so the $20 Visa gift cards is what they're asking for. So I'm sure your church is going to need to have your own plan that's in the newsletter article that you create for how the members can get those $20 Visa cards to one person at your church or to the conference. Do they all send them individually? I don't know how you guys want to work it out, but you'll need to put that into your article. So keep that in mind. And I think I mentioned that we should have, I think we're going to get like 3 more articles coming up. The most recent one that's out there about the mission project it's talking about all of the campus ministries, but it's based off of an interview with the ASU campus minister, Jamie. Oh, I can't remember Jamie's last name.
Booth.
Thank you, Jamie Booth, which is super knowledgeable. And she's been, talk about going above and beyond. She's been the shopper for these students. Especially because of COVID with all the quarantine requirements, she's been their saving grace. And that's one of the reasons why we were so aware of the great need to help these students. It wasn't just 1 or 2 kids, and it doesn't even matter, what their background is. Some kids look like, oh, they're doing fine. They've got their clothes looks pretty clean. They've got their backpack. They're showing up to class, and turns out they may actually be homeless. They're kind of couch surfing from friends' houses to friends' houses. So that this is a real need, and that was already already existed, and because of COVID, it just became even worse, especially since a lot of our students are probably working part-time or somewhere where because of COVID, they most likely lost their jobs. And so even those that weren't in a difficult situation are now super tight on funds. And I mean, the proof is even in seeing the really long lines of students waiting in line to get a box of food when there's a food drive that comes in that only comes every other week. So it's not going to be 2 weeks worth of food in that box. Usually it's like 2 or 3 days worth. So anyway, we do have a short social media video that's just about finished. It's a 45-second video that will be added to that same webpage, dscumc.org/mission-project. Please note that page is where we're adding everything for you guys to be able to grab what you need. It's not really meant to be the place to send everybody to, learn about it here. You could, because they'll find everything there. You totally could. But in my experience, whatever that means, it makes sense for you to have placed on your own website or information that you're sending out from your emails, something that's localized to your church, because inevitably people are going to have questions. People are going to have ideas of how we can do this better. So they need to have that contact at your church to be able to end up with the best result in collecting these $20 gift cards. All right, any questions about that? No. Okay, now the last part is, I'm super excited about the Commission on Communications. For those of you that don't know, this has been an ongoing, for many years. I mean, every conference has to have a Commission on Communications. Sometimes we've had a pretty good one and it's been active and meeting the needs of the churches, and sometimes it's not so active. And this past year we had a weird situation. It was very active, but the weird thing is that it wasn't really, the group ended up becoming a group that was combined together from the DSC Way Forward teams a couple annual conferences ago. And then from last annual conference, that group was listed as the Commission on Communications, even though nobody in that team knew it. And we all voted on it at annual conference to pass them as the new Commission on Communications. So it was really weird. I'm thankful for all the people that did serve on that commission and that are continuing to serve on that commission. Turns out because of that, I mean, like, our leadership wasn't correct, because it was Khalif Smith, an amazing pastor and leader in so many different areas, and was doing a great job as a leader, chairperson for Commission on Communication. But his leadership in that commission was, I don't know, it didn't follow our rules, because he was already leading another conference committee. And so we were just a wreck, worried from day one, like, aren't we out of compliance? And so now I'm excited to report that we finally are in compliance. We have a new chair, which is here with us, Sherry Hull, and she's got an incredible background. That's part of why I'm so excited about it. I'm excited about, I love change. I feel like it's going to be something even better than what we were doing. And it already was a pretty dang good group. But Sherry has a unique set of experience and skill set that is just going to be perfect for this Commission on Communication. So I asked Sherry if she would introduce herself, tell us a little bit about herself, and perhaps open up the invitation in case anybody wants to or is considering joining the commission. Maybe talk a little bit about what the commission might be like.
Thanks, Christina. Gosh, I wish you would write something for me for LinkedIn. I'm excited about this. This is a different avenue from my background in some respects. I worked for several years in not-for-profits, mostly on the for-profit side of a not-for-profit, which there's a whole long explanation of what that is, but also in business development from that aspect and working with not-for-profits and what that actually means. I also have worked with boards of directors and spoken to large groups about leadership within boards, and then eventually ended up at ADOT. For about 5 years, I was hired to come in and facilitate many things, but as it turned out, I wrote the internal communication plan, which included leadership development and mentoring and several other programs that I started within that to change internal communication. I was in charge of culture change within that 4,300 person agency, as well as developing all the leaders that were there, almost 800 of those. So I'm interested in communication. I can't remember who said it, but it's the phrase that there is out there that the greatest myth about communication is that it's happened. Just because we're talking, it doesn't mean that, we've actually connected with each other, or we're communicating and it hasn't gotten any further with that. Every company I've worked with in either my consulting business I have now or within any company I've ever worked with, communication is always the top challenge that there is out there to understand what's actually not happening. Some of it has to do with real leadership development, really developing leaders so that they understand what communication actually is and working with the folks that they work with. So it has to do with that and really identifying where those challenges lie, why teams aren't getting along, why people aren't really connecting with each other. And everything that I see from the bishop and everything that I've read and within all of that says to me that he really, it's something out in front of him that he really, like he said, it's the way forward. And how do we put this together? And what I see in working with the team in this last year within the team is that, we have a lot coming down the path with a lot of challenges we thought we were going to deal with last year, and now some this year, but we'll still be doing that in a method of potentially hybrid or whatever that looks like to do that. So communication starts falling apart pretty easily anyway. And then you add to that people aren't comfortable with Zoom. And now we're going to enter in several other challenges and some things that had some difficulty before. And now we're going to try to talk with people without being in person. So there's a lot of things, a lot of complexities that are within that. So I'm hoping that with a team that I want to put together, Jim Truescott and I have worked together before. He knows how process oriented I am with all that. I'm really, he's laughing. I'm people oriented, but I'm also process oriented. The relationships are a process as well. And we need to look at what we need to do to develop those relationships, to have better communication, to work with our churches and help people be able to communicate and understand what the importance of that is. Our congregations can get lost in the process, and especially people that are older, that aren't connecting, especially now. So I want people and processes and programs. I always break it out like that, and how we can put this together and then look at what does that look like. So this team will start out building an infrastructure. It'll be a strategic plan. It will be goals and strategies and tactics, and looking at, in general, how are we going to communicate? What does that look like? Where are we going? How are we going to put all that together? And what does that actually mean? And how are we going to measure that along the way to do that? So I want to bring to the table some of the things I've done before. I'm really interested in pulling together a very diverse group and people from all over, each of the districts. And that's a bit of a challenge for me because, like any of us, I live in a particular district and I came from Indiana. So I know people in Phoenix for 14 years there, but I don't know a ton of people. I live in Prescott Valley now, so I'm reaching out and looking for diversity, looking for people that are interested in rolling up their sleeves and working together and looking at building this infrastructure together. In terms of time commitment, certainly it's going to, in the very beginning of this, it's going to take a bit of, my thought eventually is to have a once a month meeting, but we really need to look at potentially maybe every other week for a little bit before we actually hit conference we want to start getting some of this stuff down, and how are we going to go about this before we're asked to put something together to do that. So maybe some of that, but eventually, this is how I envision it anyway, that it's once a month that we get together to do that. Thanks, Julie, for asking that question. So that's kind of it. I talked quite a bit with us, but if anybody has any questions toward this, I'm happy to take any questions. Thoughts? Yeah, Jim jumped in. He's going to be part of it. Amanda's part of it already. So I appreciate their support and being willing, just to roll up your sleeves and start looking at this, because there is no way to define this initially. We do have to define it. We want to be the communication answer with this, so that we help connect everyone everywhere within the conference. So that's it. Send me an email if you want to. Ask me any questions you want. Yes, Jim.
I had worked with Sherry on several different projects, and this delineation of the processes and procedures, I think, is really helpful, because once that is more known to everyone, we know, if we're facing something new, like a pandemic, what do we do with, X, Y, and Z? So looking forward to it.
Great. I mean, that's exactly it. It's still new territory, even as we speak, and how we do everything. Again, the old trite phrase is, how we do anything is how we do everything. So if we develop how we're going to go about this, and certainly we're going to make mistakes and try to figure out what we're doing, but continual evaluation of looking at, what makes sense within this. That's why it's important to have a very diverse group. And I don't want to have like 30 people on it. It doesn't make it. Then I do board development in many arenas. And when you get 25 or 30 people on a board, pretty soon it's too many, and it's hard to make decisions like that. It's hard to move forward with that. So really getting a tight-knit group of people that build relationships among themselves, and we figure out what everybody's gifts are in order to be able to let them fit into the area that they feel most comfortable and excited about. So I just put my email in the chat. Somebody asked, I think Holly asked me for that. And Christina sent out this survey to all of you too. If you have interest, respond to the survey, please. I get the results of that too. So you don't have to be an internal communications expert. Everybody has gifts, that they bring to the table. Thanks, Christina. That was very nice of you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so I think I thought you covered it really well. This is, even though the commission has technically been in existence from day one, because we have to have it, this is a new, like a fresh start. So whatever it's going to be, you really can't look at, well, what has this commission done in the past? Because with this new team and with Sherry's leadership, it's going to be something new. So that's kind of exciting, just to know that your input really is going to make a significant difference. Your participation is going to matter. It's not just a warm body filling that seat and we're doing, status quo. Well, it's always been done this way. It doesn't matter. This is how we always do it. This is a fresh start, and there's a lot of challenging topics. There's the future of the church is, who knows what it's going to be. So communications, it's always a big deal, and it's always the first thing that people list as something that's gone wrong. So in this case, knowing that this scary road ahead is before us, this commission is really going to be critical to our success and paving the way towards a positive outlook, regardless of whatever the future may be, that we can be a part of that in a positive, hopeful, loving way, where we can still be a beautiful reflection of the love of God in whatever community you're in the Desert Southwest Conference. And of course, we do collaborate quite a bit with the Western jurisdiction. And that seems like a perfect segue. It wasn't part of my plan today, but I do want to remind you that the April resources for the Where Love Lives campaign are also available. That one's a longer link, so I'll include it in the email as a reminder so you can access it. I think this particular month, April, the cool thing is that these resources were put together by the Commission on Communication. So it's a great example of how this team can really work together to do something different and unique. You'll notice that in this April resource, we've got multiple languages in there, including sign language interpretation for the videos. It's a unique month because if you weren't using any of the resources in the past, this particular one makes it really easy for you to just plug it in and try it out, because we're not so much, it's always about inclusion and being a church where all people are welcome. But the focus this time is about what we do as United Methodists, about our focus on, every time I always struggle with the scripture. I think it's Micah 6:8, and it was about loving justice. No, every time I struggle with it, but it's just a reflection of 3 parts about who we are as United Methodists, involved in our community, involved in standing up for, speaking, or providing a path for those without voice to be able to speak up, and speaking up for them as well. And then the personal piety part about it too, which is all about your personal relationship with Christ. So 3 fundamental pieces about being United Methodist that any one of our churches can relate to. So the cool thing about these resources is that it's one video that kind of lays it all out. And then you can use segments of the video, which are already pieced out for you, that focus on each one of those topics. And the General Board of Church and Society Faith and Facts cards that helps you. So you could use that 1-minute video with the Faith and Facts cards to ask questions, to have a deeper dive into what it means to be a United Methodist. And we also include the contact information for every one of those ministries. Thank you, Jim. For every one of those ministries that is featured in the video, because it's a lot of really cool, diverse ministries that you might not have even known that exist in the Desert Southwest Conference. So you'll be able to connect with those ministries and either find out more, or maybe even start a new ministry in your own church by connecting with them, either partnering with them or starting something like that. And now you have a contact where you can talk to them and ask them, hey, how did you guys do this? Or how did you get started? Or what permits do you need? Maybe whatever it is. The idea is you'll use these resources to not just take a deeper dive into what it means to be United Methodist, but what does that mean then to you? Now you've gone through this journey, is God calling you towards renewing a ministry that you guys already had and doing something new and exciting with it? Or is God calling you to start something new? I think this particular month will really help to strengthen your own faith, your connection with your members, and because it just speaks beyond being United Methodist about, really it's about the transformation of the world, about being a good person, being, yes, a good Christian. But what I'm getting at is you could use this resource as a way of reaching out into your community with people that have nothing to do with your church, where those ministries really speak out to them. They can connect with them because, I know someone that went through something like that, or that sounds interesting. I'd love to travel to see what the border ministries look like. Take a look at the video. You'll see what I'm talking about with these ministries. Read through the Faith and Facts cards. You'll see it's really easy to use. And even if you've never started a small group before, this might be a package that you could share with somebody that it's never started one before, that has been looking for a way to participate, to step up, to do something with their church. And you could totally do it on Zoom. So it's pretty cool. And thanks to Jim. Go ahead, Sherry.
I wanted to add something to that, to everything that you said, was when we worked on this, the other thing, the initial overarching thought that we had was that the church is more than a building. The churches are all the people that's within that, and we went ahead as Methodists and churches, whether we were in the building or not, and all of the projects and everything that was done had nothing to do necessarily with being in the building. It had to do with relationships and people being together and still going on and creating and doing and giving and all of that, in spite of the pandemic. These are all of the things that went on in spite of the pandemic. So we weren't necessarily sitting in the congregation, but it was people coming together in other ways safely to put those kinds of things together. So I think that was one of the things that jumped out at me initially when we first started working on this is, the church is the people, the church is, it lives within each of us, and that's what makes that. So, and I apologize. I wanted to add one more thing, if I could, to what I was saying a minute ago. I meant to say, I need to have this team put together by Friday, because the conference is wanting me to give them the list. So, a bit of a strain there, but I'm actually close. I'm down to, I just have 2 or 3 people that I can add to the list yet, and then I'll be done. But I meant to add that as well. I need to get that completed so that I can get that to them. I'm sorry for jumping in the middle of that. So anyway, I wanted to add that too, because it's it was such a heartfelt video. All those videos that we did, or all the stuff that we did with that, and you do such a beautiful job in pulling it all together for us. At the end, with thoughts and all of that. You're so talented in all the things that you do. You made us look really cool in what we had. Anyway, thanks, Christina.
Thank you. You're welcome, Sherry. And thanks to Jim. Unless there's any other questions, I'm going to lead us out with reading that scripture that the April theme is all about, which is that we care more about people than our buildings. So if you have questions, raise your hand when I'm done reading. We'll get to your questions. All right, the scripture, I think, is Micah 6:8, and it is, "He has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." It's beautiful. Okay, guys, seeing that there's no more questions, I'm going to let you go. It's 10:38. Thank you for joining us. I will be sending an email with notes about the things we talked about and links to everything we talked about. Hope you have a great rest of your week.